Hey everyone, Pastor Dave Freeman from Jubilee Christian Center. Welcome to day 2 of our How to Get the Most Out of Reading the Bible. Yesterday we talked about the devotional method and we read Philippians chapter 1. Today we're going to talk about the chapter summary method, which is a little less in-depth, not quite as intense as the devotional method, but it's a great way for people who are just learning to read the Word. They've never had any experience. They want to engage the Word of God, or if you've read the Word a lot and you just want to go back and get a quick summary and a refresher. This particular method, the chapter summary method, is essentially picking out a chapter and then you read through it 5-6 times. As you do, you don't take any notes, you don't write down anything. You're going to do that after you've read, not during. So you just read through without stopping. As you're doing that, what you do is you read it aloud to yourself just quietly so that you can hear as you're reading. And then as you do, pay attention to about 10 different things that you're going to sort of make notes on after you're done reading. And so the first thing is, what I like to do is, when I read a chapter, is give it a title so that you remember it, so that up here and in here, you can always come back to it because you've associated a particular title with it. So it's great for the mental filing systems, so be it. And as you do, like for example, in Philippians chapter 2, which is the chapter that we're reading today, I would list this as the humility of Christ and how to live that. And so, if 2 weeks, 3 weeks goes by, I'm like, man, I want to refer to something about Christ's humility and how he was so humble and how there's grace for me to live that out as well. I think, oh yeah, Philippians chapter 2, because in my mind, I've labeled this as the humility of Christ and how to live that out. And so that's one way of helping yourself with this chapter summary. The next thing is as you read, pay attention to the content. In other words, paraphrase. What's being said? What's the essential, just the outline of what's being said in this chapter? It's not interpreting. It's not taking the time to interpret it. This is just observing as you read. So that'd be the second thing that you do with the chapter summary. The third thing is pay attention to who wrote it and who's in it and why are they in it. Why is the writer writing about these certain people, and is there anything that you can take from these people's lives? Is there a lesson to be learned from the people that are in that? The fourth thing is, as you're reading, choose a verse. And this verse might change as you read this chapter 3 weeks from now, or if you read it again later, the verse that stands out to you today might not be the same verse that stands out to you later. But that's okay. As you're reading through the chapters, or the chapter, is there a particular verse that stands out to you? So in Philippians chapter 2, for me, what stood out was in Philippians 2 and verse 14, it says, "Do all things without grumbling or questioning, that you may be blameless and innocent children of God, without blemish in the midst of a crooked and twisted generation, with whom you shine as lights in the world, holding fast to the word of life." And so that one stood out for me as I read it this time. It's like, okay, particularly the part about grumbling and complaining. How much do I grumble? How much do I complain? Because as I grumble and complain, obviously it diminishes the light that I carry in the world, and realizing that I do shine as a light, my grumbling actually can diminish the light of God in my life. And so in the chapter summary, find a verse as you're reading through the chapter. The fifth thing is crucial words. Is there any word that really stands out to you? This is significant. It doesn't mean that the word has to be used a whole lot of times within the chapter. It might be, for me in Philippians 2, the word humility stood out. As I read about Christ, the word humility and the fact that he humbled himself, that was something that really stood out to me. And so now I'm going to keep that aside because I might want to study the topic of humility, because it's created some questions about how can I be more humble as Christ was. The sixth thing is the challenge. Is there anything that challenges you when you're reading through this? Write that down. Is there something you have questions about? Is there something that doesn't quite make sense? Is there something that it's like, what does that mean? This isn't the time when you're reading to stop and think through that. This is the time just to write that down so that maybe later you can say, what does that particular verse mean? What is that challenges me? What does that mean? And then you can do a study on that particular topic or that particular thing, and look into it and gather understanding. And so as you read through, and at the end of it, if there was anything that challenged you, make sure that you just write it on a piece of paper at the end, and then set that aside for further study, and you can just study that particular thing. The seventh thing is cross references. A lot of Bibles have a middle margin or footnotes with verses that are associated with the ones that you're reading in the chapter. Check those things out. It gives you a good context of what you've been reading. Number 8, see Christ. All throughout the Bible, it points to Christ. In some way, shape, or form, it points to Christ. And so as you're reading your chapter, how does this verse refer to Christ? How does it point you to Christ? Where is Christ revealed? Is Christ shown and demonstrated somehow in this? And how can that benefit you in getting to know the character and who God is and who Christ was? The ninth thing is, what's the central lesson? In all this, what is the lesson that's being taught? And then the 10th thing is the conclusion. The conclusion is the application. And this is similar to the devotional method, where you say, okay, how can I take what I just read? Is there anything in there that I just read that I can personally apply? What is God saying, and what can I do about it? Because once again, if you don't live the Word of God, you'll never really know the Word of God. And so with all this in Philippians chapter 2, I encourage you to read it. Take the chapter summary, read it 5-6 times without stopping. And then after that, go ahead and take time to do those 10 things. A piece of paper, write it down. So give it a name. What is the content? What is the context? Who's in it? Why are they in it? Why is this chapter in the Bible? What does it say about Christ? And as you do that, I believe that it'll become more alive to you. So I hope you enjoyed reading Philippians chapter 2, and I pray that as you do the summary, the chapter summary, that God will open up your understanding and you'll be able to enjoy His Word. God bless.